Hello, everybody. So, what I wanted to today is to look at one of the kalim that was created in the Mishkan. We know that the parashas before spoke about parashas Truma, parashas Tetzaveh. They spoke about the giving of what needed to be done for the building of the Mishkan, and then Vayakhel Pekudei, having been broken with Kitisa, the story of the Egel HaZahav and everything that came with it. That Vayakhel Pekudei then explains the actual building of the Mishkan itself. And it speaks Vayas that he made all the different kalim. I would like to look specifically today at the menorah, and one idea that I think is important for us to understand. So let's just understand what the menorah was. Vayas et menorah zahav tahor, made it out of pure gold. Miksha asayt menorah yerecha v'kana, the base and it's all the different shafts, the different branches of the menorah were made out of hammered work. And all of it was one massive piece of gold to create this magnificent menorah. And what did it look like? And there were six branches that came from the sides of the menorah, six on the one side, and six on the other side. And then it describes each one of the different branches. It says there were three cups which had like almond blossoms, each with the actual flower itself and the petals on the one branch. The way it describes it, kaftor v'aferach. That's the words, kaftor v'aferach. Kaftor v'aferach is the beauty of the branch of the menorah. And these three cups, meshukadim, that were like shkedim. Shkedim are almonds, looked like shkedim, but kanai echad. Kaftor v'aferach kain l'shesh akanim hayotzim min ha'menorah. And that's what for all the six branches of the menorah. But if you look carefully in the pasuk should have said that there are these three cups which look like almond blossoms, each with its own little flower and petals on one branch, and then three cups on another branch, and all six branches were like that. But the way the Torah presents it is that it says shlosha gvim meshukadim bakana ha'echad, and then it says ushlosha gvim meshukadim bakane echad. And the fact that it says ha'echad and echad means that we have to understand that. Says the Netziv Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who we've spoken about before. He says so important. He says Teva zu aktuva b'shinui me'akatuv b'chol ma'amakomot b'kaneh ha'echad. He says, well, the fact that it says kaneh echad is different from all the other times where it speaks about, where it also always speaks about kaneh ha'echad. The one speaks the one, and the other one just says one. So it's therefore he says we have to understand it must be that there's something very special about that. And when it speaks about it, it points it and it says, Gviim shukadim b'kaneh echad kaftor v'aferach. It says that it was Gviim, it was these cups that looked like almond blossoms, b'kaneh echad kaftor v'aferach. On the one branch, kaftor v'aferach. And it had on it the calyx, that's why they translated, and the plant itself. He says, what is that all about? We have to understand the understanding of that. The fact that it says kaneh echad, one kaneh, and then it says kaftor v'aferach leads us to begin to try and understand why is it that the Torah changed the way that it speaks. And he says, we quote from the Midrash Rabbah. The Midrash Rabbah tells us the Rabbi Tarfon, when Rabbi Tarfon would hear a beautiful Dvar Torah, he would say, what do we say when we have beautiful Torah? We say, Shkoyach. But what Rabbi Tarfon would say, Kaftor v'aferach. His praise of a Dvar Torah was praising it through the eyes of the menorah itself. Kaftor v'aferach. And it says the Netziv, V'sichas Rabban Shel Yisrael melamdeinu. And the way that the teachers of Am Yisrael are presented comes to teach us something. Sheivin, that we need to understand. Asher b'kaftorim b'frachim shel menorah, that in the kaftor and perach of the menorah, ramuz chidushei Torah sheyesh behem seichel tov la'osehem, comes to teach us that in the kaftor and perach of the menorah, in that actual structure of the menorah, is something so important for us that there are chidushei Torah, there are incredible secrets and nuances in the Torah that are seichel tov la'osehem, of the incredible important things for those who do them. And that's why he said, that a person who gives a beautiful chiddush is the Dvar Tov Shehu Kaftov Ferach Sh'ala Menorah, that it's exactly like the Kaftor and Ferach, that the chidushim of Torah are like the Kaftor and Ferach of the menorah. So what is that all about? So he says that in Tziv, we know that we learned in Parashat Tzaveh, Sha'menorah bichlam merumaz laha'ir al chochmas ha'torah bepilpula shel Torah. That the menorah, the light of the menorah, comes to hint to what? To the chokhmah, the wisdom of the Torah in understanding it, and v'chakira v'ha'ion, in the depth of understanding Torah. That's the light of the Torah. V'hinei, behold, he says, Shisha kanei menorah im hanera im tzai. The 6 branches of the Torah, together with the middle branch, hein heima sheva chokhmot chitzonos. He says those are the 7 wisdoms that are tefillim the Torah. Those are secondary to Torah. There's Torah, which is the highest level of wisdom, and then there are these 7 wisdoms which are tafel to Torah, which are secondary to Torah. But we need to understand why the light of the menorah is the light of Torah. But the Torah needs these 7 aspects of wisdom which come underneath the, which are made up by the branches of the menorah, that needs them litparesh b'chol pratei shiurin, because we need to use that in order to spread all over with the basis, with the basis of all the other chokhmas, in order for us to understand Torah in its most profound form. So Torah is a depth of something that is the highest level of chokhmah. But underpinning Torah are these other levels of chokhmah, the social sciences, the physical sciences, all those things that are so important for us to really begin to really understand what Torah is. And that very much is, of course, hashkafically, what we believe is that it's not only the Torah itself on a highest level, but to really underpin that, we need maths and science and geography and history and biology and all these things to really get to grips with what the Torah really means. Because if we don't have that, then we can't really understand it. Because the Torah is the highest level of wisdom. The world is created. Chazal explained to us, Hashem looks into the Torah, created the world, but the world is made up of different laws. Those laws are the underpinning of everything that is the Torah itself. And he says, therefore, the Gevi'im, those little cups that we have, Hamoirim al Hashka'ah, they are the things from which you draw, because the Torah draws from the different chokhmot, and the different, those chokhmot, meshukim, adat, ladat, lavin, tiktukei devar Hashem. And it's those different things that draw for us to understand exactly what it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. And so therefore we need to understand, and this is really one of the great messages of the menorah, that menorah is not only about the light of Torah, which is lit on the top of the menorah, but the menorah is also about an understanding that in order to understand the light of Torah, you need to understand the other chokhmot. But, and this is really the important part, is that we can't understand the other chokhmot without the Torah. And what we need to really understand is that our fundamental is in understanding those other chokhmot, those other chokhmas, is in order to understand the Torah. That must be our driving force, the Torah, not the other chokhmas. And when we do that, we are able to merge together Torah Umadah, Torah Im Derech Eretz, whatever it is, modern orthodoxy, all of those things merge. But the driver has to be Torah, the Torah that we learn, the Torah that we love, the Torah that brings us the light in our lives. Have a beautiful day.